All right, everybody, welcome and thank you for coming to the Timeline to Application meeting. This is for folks who are applying in 2017 for 2018 matriculation to medical, dental, optometry, podiatry, and veterinary programs. And here's our set of goals for the presentation. So this presentation is designed to help you see the full picture from now, the end of October, up until the point where you matriculate into your program. So we're going to go over the pre-health advising programs requirements for committee letters, and we're also going to go over kind of the busy times that you'll have for the application cycle, times when you can expect to be spending a lot of time doing things, when you can expect maybe a little more stress and anxiety, because it is good to know about that. You may not want to be doing anything else that's going to add extra stress to your life during those points, which might be a little bit more stressful. And then also, it is really important to know that it's very expensive to apply to these programs. If you haven't started saving money for it, now is the time to be saving money. So I want to just go over during this presentation an analysis of the financial piece, talk a little bit about when you'll be spending money during the application process so you can kind of think about your budget. So we're in the end of October now. We're going to start by talking about what's going on through November. So if you haven't already, definitely go through the initial presentation or the initial email that you got from me. Make sure to add all the workshop dates to your calendar. Go through the self-assessment that you have in MAP, and actually go through the applicant agreement in MAP. In the applicant agreement, it has all of the dates and the deadlines that you'll need to complete, or you can take them from this presentation, put those in your calendar so that you don't forget. I recommend having a little ping a couple weeks before the deadline so that you're aware, oh, whoops, deadline approaching. Right now, you should definitely, if you haven't already, go over the self-assessment. Make sure that you can answer all of the questions in the self-assessment. So start doing a preliminary review of the self-assessment. If there's something in the self-assessment that you're thinking, oh, whoop, I don't have that, start thinking about, is that something that I have the ability to do in the next 6 to 9 months, or is it something that I feel like I'm going to need longer than that to complete? So start doing that planning and considering, is this going to be the best year? Use that self-assessment as a tool to really think about, is this the time? Is this the best time for me to apply? Or do I have enough to do to make myself the best applicant that I should consider deferring? Now, if you're going back and forth on deferring, or maybe you're thinking, well, I could use some more shadow experience. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get that. I'm really looking for it. I've started shadow experience. I'm not sure if that's going to be enough. You can continue through the process. And if it comes down to, the deadline and you're like, you know what, I'm just not comfortable with this, you don't have to decide today, I'm going to defer. You'll save yourself a little stress if you decide today. But by going through the process, it doesn't obligate you to apply. We've had students who have even had a committee letter interview, and then they've said, you know what, I'm just not feeling right about this. I want to wait another year and add more experiences. I think I'm going to do well this next year in my academics and get my GPA a little bit higher, and I'm going to be happier applying next year. So always constantly be thinking, is this the right time? Don't be questioning yourself. If you're confident it's the right time, yay, good for you. But don't be afraid also, if you're not feeling good about it, to put the brakes on things. Foundation meeting sign up has started. So if you Haven't signed up for it. I know Miss Wolfson said her appointments, her schedule is booking up pretty fast, so do email her about that. You should have received an email about it. If you didn't, send me an email after this and I can forward it to her, or you can just email her directly. Start setting up your strategy for preparing for your entrance exam. If you're taking the MCAT, the DAT, the OAT, or the GRE, and realizing that taking a Kaplan, Princeton, Exam Crackers course is not enough. Those classes will help you with organizing your time, but you're still going to be spending a lot of time studying for those. So if you haven't taken those tests yet, now is the time to start thinking, okay, how am I going to be organizing my life to be doing that studying? You know, if I'm doing that studying in the spring, what things am I keeping in the spring that are things that I need to do for me and for my mental health? And what things am I going to be setting aside and letting go for the time when I'm preparing? For MCAT, you should have registered for that. Registration is opened already. I do recommend registering early for the MCAT because seats do fill up, particularly seats in the urban areas. So there are a lot of people in Boston who want to take the test, and you'll find that those seats fill up faster, particularly on the really popular days. We have had people who have not signed up on time and have wound up having to travel to take the MCAT. I've heard of people having to go to like Puerto Rico or Saskatchewan to take their MCAT. So, you know, you're better off trying to register that for that early. If, however, you are not comfortable with where you are, when it comes time for the test, know that you can change the scheduled time of the test. For the DAT, the registration process is a little different. So you'll set up a DentaPin account. Once you submit the approval to be allowed to sign up for the DAT, you have 3 to 4 months to register for that test. So you have a 3 to 4 month window within which to register. I recommend once you're given approval, sign up for that test right away. The DAT is a little bit different than the MCAT in that there's a whole host of days that you can take the test. So it's not quite as tricky getting a seat. You're going to find a seat available because there are more days, because you take them at a Prometric test center. And then also, I am here. I have appointments 4 days a week, and I definitely recommend setting up a time to meet with me if you have any questions. I've talked to a lot of you so far, and that's been great. And, you know, definitely feel free to come in if you're on co-op. I typically do Skype or phone appointments with folks who are on co-op who aren't able to come in, and you can just sign up on your MyNEU and just mention it's a phone or a Skype appointment. So that's by the end of November. By the end of December, you'll want to get a read on some of those evaluators, so the letter writers. And I do actually recommend before you talk to the letter writers, you should probably touch base with either myself, Dr. Bagley, or Ms. Wolfson. Probably touch base with me because I'm here all the time, about who you're planning to ask for letters. And the reason that I recommend that is it is possible to make a mistake in who you ask for letters. For example, if you're a chemistry major and you ask 3 chemistry faculty for letters, it's your choice. You can do that if you want. I don't recommend it because then it looks like, oh, do you talk to faculty outside the chemistry department? Or let's say you're a chemistry major and you don't get any chemistry faculty, then they may wonder, well, do you not get along with faculty in your major? What's up with that? Um, so just kind of running those faculty by me just to get a sense of, do these folks look good? Does this seem like a good set of letters? Because it's not just the individual letters. Do they all kind of come together to make a really good composite set of letters? It's not required, but I strongly recommend just touching base with me about that. Start filling out your map portfolio. I've seen your map portfolios and they could use a little filling out. That does have to be filled out before your interview. Go over the applicant agreement. Again, write everything down in your calendar. We will in December have the personal statement workshop and start writing that over winter break. You're really going to want to put a lot of time into that personal statement. It is not something that you write last minute in June. It's something that you want to be working on and developing and going over in order to get a really good statement of who you are. It's not a lot of words, and that makes it almost harder. And then you're also going to start researching the schools that you want to apply for, and you're going to start putting together a system of things of, how you're going to track the schools, because every time that you go to do research on a school, you're not going to want to look up the same information. So you're going to want to have the information in a consistent format so you can go back to it and say, okay, what is this about this one school? What's the same thing about the next school? Excel works great, or you may have some other system that works for you. Okay, our first deadline's January 31st. The applicant agreement is due, the self-assessment is due. The applicant agreement you will get to through your MAP profile on the home page. There's a link, you'll click to that, it will take you to a Google document form. You'll fill out the form. It says in MAP that you need to upload something. You actually don't need to upload anything. You'll just fill out the Google form. I recommend also downloading or taking a screenshot of what you're filling out, because you're signing something there. You want to make sure you remember everything. Put it all in your calendar. Remember all of the details, because we're going to expect you to fulfill all of those requirements. The requirements aren't that rigorous. They're the deadlines that we're going over, and there are some basic requirements, but really read them over. The self-assessment is a lot longer. You're going to access that through MAP, download it, complete it, and that you will need to upload to MAP by midnight on January 31st. January 31st is a Tuesday. We'll expect it in by midnight. I think that when you upload it, if you upload it after 5 p.m., it may say February 1st on your end. We can see what time you've uploaded it, so don't panic if you upload it at 11:50. Not that any of you would do that, but if you do upload it at 11:50, I can see that it was 11:50 when you uploaded it, so don't panic. Remember to put some time into that self-assessment. I cannot emphasize to you enough how much we use those self-assessments when writing our letters. I know I can say for myself that I always try and quote you guys at least once in my committee letter. And sometimes I'll read something in your self-assessment that you've put together, and I'll be like, that was a really wonderful statement. I will just copy and paste and say, as the student said, blah, 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 blah. And I'll just quote you in there. So if you want to be able to emphasize a point in your letter, that's a great way to do it. January is the time when you want to be asking for your letters. The letters are due March 15th. I would say you want to give your letter writers at least 2 months. So don't ask people right on January 1st, because they're going to be busy. They're going to be coming back from the holidays. Give them a couple weeks. For faculty, let them get through the first week of classes, because there's always that settling in period, figuring out, okay, what's what. There's always that drop add period where new students are coming into their class and asking them a lot of questions. So let them get settled back in. Then you go ask them for the letters of recommendation. For those letters, you're going to do an initial ask in person, and then you're going to follow up with a request through MAP. We'll have a letters workshop coming up soon to go over that more, but just so you get a sense of when that will be. So in terms of ongoing efforts in January, you'll be studying for the MCAT, DAT, OAT, whatever your entrance exam is. You'll be meeting with your evaluators if you haven't already. You may potentially be sitting for your entrance exam. You'll be working on your personal statement. I really strongly recommend going to the Writing Center or working with the Writing Center online if you're not on campus. If you're an alumni, the Writing Center does work with alumni as well. We are happy in the pre-health office to work with you as well. But I can tell you, I've talked to some folks who have worked with the Writing Center. You go in there, there's somebody who is studying for their PhD in English who's going to help you write your statement. Why wouldn't you use that resource, right? You've already paid for it. People have said they've gotten really excellent help from the Writing Center. So, I recommend it definitely. We typically start doing committee letter interviews in February. So you can request a committee letter if all of your required letters are marked as verified in MAP. The required letters are the 3 faculty letters and the clinical letter. The 2 additional letters are not required. We recommend getting all the letters in because it's stressful getting those letters in, right? So that part actually where you're getting the self-assessment in, particularly if you put it off to the last minute, that's going to be a bunch of time that you're going to spend on that. If you want to do it well, you're going to do a lot of thinking about, okay, what did I do? What did it mean to me? How did I contribute here? The same with putting together MAP, everything in MAP. It's going to take a little bit of time for you to really thoughtfully fill out MAP. It's going to take time if you haven't been keeping up with your activities and experiences to think of, okay, who is my supervisor? How many hours did I spend in this particular activity? What's their contact information? What did I contribute? What did I learn from it? What the schools really care about, what the admissions committees care about, is not that you did an activity, but what you took away from it, what you contributed to it, which is why that's what we have you write in MAP. So particularly for the MD and DO programs on your application, you're going to write descriptions for your activities. The dental programs, they have you write descriptions, but they're teeny tiny descriptions. They don't give you a lot of characters, so it's like one sentence. For the other programs, though, they give you enough space to write about it, and you can write something that's really task-based that doesn't show a lot of learning, or you can write something that shows what you took away from an experience that shows a lot more growth and that shows that you're a deep thinker, that shows I'm going to learn a lot, I'm going to take away a lot from my experiences. That is what the medical schools are looking for. That is what the dental schools want to know about. So they want to know, you can spend 200 hours in community service and learn absolutely nothing. They want to know what you learned, right? So by spending the time in February and January, in December over break, putting in thoughtful descriptions, you're going to be saving yourself time when you put together your actual application, and you're going to be giving us good information when we put together your committee letter. So you should be starting to finalize your personal statement and upload that to MAP. There's also those 3 essays in there. The 3 essays are not a part of your application, they're for us. So all the things that have to be in MAP, I'm not going to read down the entire list, but all of this should be complete in MAP before you request your committee letter interview. And some of this is kind of easy. For the GPA calculations, you can just pull up a GPA calculator online and use that to figure out your GPA. We're looking at patterns of grades. If your freshman year was not as strong, we like to see that information. That's what the schools are going to be looking at as well. So ongoing efforts in February. If you haven't already taken the MCAT, the DAT, you're going to take that. You're going to finish up your personal statement. You're going to be continuing to research your schools. You're going to get feedback on your self-assessment from either myself or Ms. Wolfson. You're going to go over that feedback, meet with me, or if you're applying MD, PhD, you definitely want to meet with Dr. Begley. And so you're firming up your application, thinking about anything that you need to be thinking about still. March 15th is when the letters of evaluation are due, and I can tell you that this is one of the more stressful times for a lot of the applicants. So just so that you are aware of that, a lot of people do find the letters to be really stressful because it's out of your control, and you're just relying on people turning those in. We do require that those letters be in on time in order for you to qualify for a committee letter interview. Um, that's how it is. A lot of people will turn them in on the last day. That is also a fact. If the letters come in after 5 o'clock on the 15th, they'll show up as coming in on the 16th. I can't actually see the exact day that they come in. So if they come in on the 15th, I will be able to see that. You will be able to tell that the letters come in by, seeing them in the your map portal. They need to be awaiting for verification. I did not write that grammar, by the way. I would like to put a disclaimer on that way, or verified. So when the letter is sent, when you put the letter writer's information in there, it will be listed as sent. Once the letter writer uploads your letter, it's listed as awaiting for verification. So we read every letter that comes in to make sure that the letter is okay. We're not exactly reading it for content. We're more reading it to make sure that they didn't, for example, say that you go to Northwestern or call you he in one sentence and she in the next sentence by accident, anything along those lines. For the external letters, we're going to make sure that they're signed. We're going to make sure that they're on letterhead, that they have a date on them, because those are things that the schools care about. If there's a problem with them, we're going to get back to the letter writer. For those things, if your letter writer forgot to sign their letter, which happens sometimes, if the letter was in by March 15th but not signed, that's going to be fine. So the letters have to be awaiting verification or verified in MAP by March 15th. The clinical letter does as well. We really strongly recommend the 2 additional letters be in as well, just so you no longer have to worry about it anymore, because it is a really stressful part of the process for a lot of people, and you'll be really glad when it's over. Now, a part of what you'll be doing in March, you're going to be researching your schools. Once your letters come in, you're also going to be ready. Once your letters come in and everything is up to date in MAP, you're going to be ready to request your committee letter interview. The deadline to request a committee letter interview is April 15th. It is not the day to request a committee letter interview, and I think sometimes people get a little confused about that. I just want to emphasize and stress that you can request it before April 15th. There are 3 of us doing committee letter interviews this coming year. We will put our appointments on our calendar, and once our slots fill up, our slots fill up. So for example, if you're applying MD, PhD, you probably really want Dr. Begley to do your committee letter interview because she is a PhD. If her slots are full, though, she's not going to be doing your committee letter interview. So if you're applying MD, PhD, you really want to complete everything as early as possible so you can be sure that you get a committee letter interview with Dr. Begley before her appointments fill up. Let's say you've known me since you were a freshman. Some of the health science students I have worked with for the last 5 years, and you're like, oh, well, we know each other really well. I really want to do my committee letter interview with Cynthia. My appointments may fill up. So make sure that you request your committee letter interview earlier so that you can set up your appointment with me, so you can be sure that you can get a time that fits in your schedule to come in and meet with me. So yeah, just, if you have a preference, if you don't have a preference, we still recommend setting it up early so it'll work in your schedule. If you're graduating and you know that after graduation you're going to be leaving the area and you want to make sure to be able to do your interview in person as opposed to via Skype, set it up early, because the early appointments that we have fill up fast and we're limited to how many we can do in one day. April and May If you haven't taken your MCAT, you're going to be studying extensively for that, obviously. Now, I'm pretty sure I don't need to say that studying for the MCAT or the DAT, the OAT, and even the GRE is time consuming, it's stressful, and taking the test, paying for the test is rather expensive. So that's another thing that you definitely have to plan and budget a lot of time for. If you're planning to take the test in May, you're going to have to plan a lot of time, especially if you're planning to take it right after graduation. Think about, okay, which senior week events am I going to? Which week events am I forgoing? Give yourself permission to enjoy some things in your senior week, but then also remind yourself other days I'm just going to be in the library all day. So really make sure you're giving yourself a balance so you don't miss out on everything, but also make sure you're studying a lot for those tests. So really put together a schedule for yourself. May 15th is the last day to have a committee letter interview. We recommend sitting for your entrance exam by May 31st. It's not required, but we really strongly recommend that you take the exam by then. So applications start opening May, June, July. Typically, the DO applications will open in May. And with the osteopathic medical school applications, they typically open them and allow you to submit them right away. Now, the osteopathic medical applications are a little tricky, but the way that the process works with all of the applications, there's a processing time that takes between, a day and a month, basically. So none of the schools will receive the applications on the first day that they can be submitted. So with the osteopathic medical schools, I know what they did last year was the first day that they released them to the schools was June 15th. So the osteopathic medical schools said they guaranteed they would do the administrative process within a month. So, which means that the first 2 weeks, there's no benefit in submitting your application. So we recommended submitting your application around the middle of May. I know that's kind of a convoluted explanation, and if you're applying to osteopathic medical school and need a little bit more of an explanation on that, definitely feel free to come and talk to me. We'll talk about it more at your committee letter interview as well. But bottom line on that, if you're applying to DO programs, they could change this year, but if it's like it was last year, it'll open in the beginning of May. You'll submit in the middle of May. The medical schools will get the applications in the middle of June. For schools that send out secondaries, after they receive the applications, you'll probably get those in middle, end of June. That's the bottom line. So for DO programs, middle, end of June, you really want to have some time set aside for secondaries, and you want to have some money set aside for secondaries. The primaries you'll be paying for in the middle of May for the DO programs. For the MD programs, application opens in the beginning of May to fill out. So you have a month to fill out the application before you submit it. So you'll have a month to fill it out, proofread it, make sure you didn't make any mistakes, and then they allow you to submit the application in the beginning of June. It's not necessarily June 1st. Last year it was June 7th. The year before that it was June 2nd. We'll have an announcement about that probably at some point in like April or so. So you'll look for that information. The medical schools, so you'll be spending money in the beginning of June for the application, for the initial application fee. The schools will receive your application typically the fourth Thursday or Friday in June. In June. So you'll get your secondaries for MD programs the last week in July, or last week in June, beginning of July is when most of the MD programs send out those secondary applications. Those are really expensive. A lot of them are about $100 each, and there are a lot of essays. So you'll do pre-writing in June, and then a lot of essay writing end of June and through July. So you need time and money in June and July if you're applying to MD programs. Dental programs, the applications have typically become available the beginning of June, and you can typically submit them right away. Again, we recommend taking a week, really looking over your application and making sure everything's okay. The dental applications, they allow fewer words. They have lower character counts on, so fewer places for typos on that application. But still, you want to go over it. You want to have a friend go over it, make sure there are no typos on it. So beginning of June is when you have the big expense. The dental schools are a little bit different with their secondaries. Some of them are going to send you a secondary right away. Some of them you do a secondary when you go to the school. So it varies a little bit when you're going to be paying that secondary application fee. Veterinary, it can vary. The veterinary applications come open in June. Also, optometry is July and podiatry is August. So just to kind of be aware, you're going to submit those applications, and I go over it here again. You really want to set aside a couple full days to input that information. You are going to, on the application, put in all of the grades from every class you've ever taken. So you're going to need copies of your transcripts. Your Northeastern transcript, obviously, that's easy. And the Northeastern transcript office is really great. If you've taken classes someplace else, though, if you took college classes in high school, you're going to need to send a copy of that transcript as a part of your application, and you're probably going to want a copy of it for your own records. If you took if you transferred to Northeastern, if you took a summer class, if you did NUN in Greece at the American College in Greece, you're actually going to need a transcript from there, and you can touch base with me to talk about that in a little bit more detail. You need that transcript because that college is an American university. For the other NUN programs, you're going to fill out a waiver form. We can talk about that as time gets closer. But that's something that you're going to kind of need to be thinking about, not today necessarily, but January, February, you actually probably do want to be thinking about that a little bit ahead of time, because you don't want your application to get held up because Greece didn't send in a transcript, because they are not as fast with those transcripts. You do want to set aside a couple days to input everything from your to your application. You don't want to rush it. You want to make sure you have somebody to proof that. And that's another thing, actually. You want somebody to proof your primary application. You want somebody to proof your secondary application. So whoever that editor person is in your family, definitely June and July, make sure that they're going to be available. They're going to have access to a computer. They're going to be willing and ready to be reading some of your essays and giving you some feedback. Here are just some additional deadlines. June 30th is the last day to take your entrance exam, and July 31st is the last day to apply except podiatry, because that application doesn't open until August. We really strongly encourage you to apply in the beginning of June and to take your entrance exam before then. So here we are again. I cannot stress enough how time-consuming these secondaries can be, especially for the MD programs. So you really want to be setting aside time to complete those. Your application is not complete without your secondaries. You're not going to get any invitations for interviews until they're received. You really want to turn them around within a week or two, but you want to spend enough time on them that you do a good job on them. One of the biggest things that I hear people say after they've applied is, oh, I didn't realize how much time these would take. So I'm telling you, it's going to take a lot of time. This is just a little math for folks who are applying to MD programs, average number of schools. Well, you guys are smart. You can sort of look out the math. Now, this is just for the application themselves. There's a cost for your MCAT. If you go for an interview, obviously you have to have an interview suit. Maybe you've already got one. If you're interviewing, say, in California, you're flying to California for that interview. So, like I said, you really want to be saving your pennies in order to make sure that you can afford to go wherever you need to go for those interviews. Sometimes the schools do have student host programs, so you can stay at a reduced cost when you go for an interview, and we definitely recommend those programs. Sometimes you do need to stay at a hotel if you're going for an interview. And a note on these essays, they're often 500 words or less. What's that famous quote from Hemingway? I didn't have the time to write a short letter, so I wrote a long one. It's a lot harder to say what you want to say in 500 words or less, so do not underestimate the amount of time that it will take you to write those short essays. For DO applicants, it is a little bit less expensive. The secondaries, it's more complicated because different schools have different policies with their secondaries. Some require essays, some don't require essays. Some have you do them when you go to the school. Some only have you do them if they're really strongly considering you. If you're going for an interview, some have everybody do them. Some of them are, there's one school that's like $200, which is outrageous. And another school I looked at that was like $35. So it can really run the gauntlet for those DO applications. And then this is some math for dental school. And the dental schools also, there's not necessarily a consistency in those. I have definitely heard of dental schools that have you write part of your essay for your an essay for your secondary at the school because they want to make sure it's actually you writing the essay and not somebody else. So it can really vary based on the schools. So next summer is going to be a big part of the application time. What happens next? Next is the exciting part. July and August is when the interviews begin. So if everything is in July and August, and I'll add to that that the letters are part of the secondary applications. So we do write the letters. We write them on an ongoing basis, and we try and get them in as fast as possible. We do write them in the order that you apply, so that's another advantage to applying early. They're not going to review your application until they have your primary application, your secondary application, and your letters. The schools typically start meeting in July or August, and they start sending interview invitations soon after that. The DO programs tend to be the first to send invitations and tend to be the first to offer interviews, then the MD programs, then the dental programs. The DO schools also tend to be the first to offer acceptances. So DO programs don't have a fixed date when they can first send acceptances. The MD programs do. October 15th is the first day that they begin to offer acceptances. December 1st is the first day that dental schools offer acceptances. It's important to note that they will be sending out interview invitations through February and even through March. Actually, people do get interview invitations in March. Sometimes people think, oh no, it's October, it's all over, and that is not the case. There's going to be a big flurry of interview invitations that go out typically end of August, beginning of September. There's a huge flurry of invitations. But then October, November, December, there's a steady stream of them. January, February, they're still sending out invitations. And then what happens in March and April is that people will start canceling interviews last minute because they've been accepted to a top choice school, and they're like, thank you for offering me this invitation. I've been accepted to another school that I know I'm going to attend, so I'd like to let you know that I'm no longer coming to this interview. So in March or April, you could get an interview invitation that's like, you know, we happen to have a slot opened on Tuesday. Are you interested in coming? So, there's a wide range of times when you can get interviews. This can be unexpectedly stressful for people. Your peers may get interviews before you. You may get interviews before peers. You could get an interview before your peer and then hear back after them. There's not necessarily a discernible pattern for how these interviews work. So you may get hopefully what happens, you get an early interview, you get an early acceptance, life is good. It doesn't always work that way, unfortunately. Sometimes people get early interviews and they don't hear back from the school for a long time. I think sometimes that has to do with, maybe the person who was your specific interviewer just couldn't make a meeting. So it could be something that random that's keeping you from hearing back from the school. So you can't know until you hear back. So you can hear from them in October. You can get denials in September, so they can't accept you until October 15th or December 1st for the MD and dental schools. They can send you a denial before that, and there are some schools, sadly, BU and Georgetown are two of the big schools that do send early denials. So sometimes you may get a denial from one of those schools, and you do have to kind of understand that that could come. It's sort of important to have that mental, okay, if it happens, this is why I apply to 15 schools. So that can be stressful as well. People don't necessarily understand how stressful the waiting can be, and the waiting and hearing back maybe from some schools and not from others. Now, when the happy event comes and you receive an interview invitation, these typically come through email. Number one, don't try and play it cool. Show enthusiasm, respond promptly, sign up for an interview. They'll usually give you directions on how to sign up for an interview. Just go right in, schedule your interview, even if it's not going to be for several months. Um, Sometimes people cluster their interviews. If you're flying out to California and you can just do one trip, that's great. But don't schedule one day and another the next day. You're going to be mentally exhausted if you do that. A side note, we do have a database of alumni who are attending the medical schools. If you let us know you have an interview, we can connect you with an alumni at the school if we have one. The alumni are just for interviewees because our alums are so busy once they're in medical school. Um, and then plan your travel and where you're going to stay if necessary. Airline fares can go up the closer you get to the actual day. So you definitely want to look into that as well. And then just some important dates. Um, April 30th, people who have multiple acceptances on April 30th have to go down to one acceptance. May 1st, the MD programs are going to go to their wait list. May 5th, the dental schools, if a dental school applicant has more than one accept, they have to go down to just one. And then May 6th, the dental programs go to their wait list. Now, this is important because if you're waitlisted at your top choice school, or maybe you have been waitlisted at a couple schools and not accepted anywhere, on April 30th, there may be somebody who has like 5 acceptances. So on April 30th, they have to tell 4 schools, I'm not coming, which opens up 4 seats in schools. So that school is going to go to their wait list and notify 4 students, hey, guess what? You're accepted. So there's a second round of acceptances that happen in April or May. So people who get waitlisted frequently do get accepted into programs at this point in that beginning of May, right through June point. It is really important, and this is something that you could talk to us about, and we'll talk about a little bit more later. If you are accepted at a program, to let them know about your continued interest in the program, or I'm sorry, if you're waitlisted, to let them know about your continued interest in the program, because when they go to their wait list, they want to accept somebody who is still interested in them. So yeah, it could be April or May, and you're hearing from a program. I have actually heard of people who, were waitlisted, and 2 weeks before school starts, somebody has, I don't know, freak out. And they're like, I don't want to be a doctor. A seat opens up, and they get in off the wait list 2 weeks before school starts. It's not common, but on rare occasions it does happen. So that's another piece that's a little hard, is that you just don't know. And June, July, you get ready for your move. You plan your orientation. This is one of our students who just started at Brown last year, Esther. Here she is in her white coat. You can see your end goal in sight. So this is when things become, you have that happy period, I guess, between when you're accepted, you're planning your move, you're getting started, and oh, wow, yeah, now it's time to really start studying. So that is our overall picture of the timeline. I don't know if anybody has questions about anything. If you do have questions, please feel free to type them in the message box, and I will be happy to get back to people, or I'll answer them in general. So, questions, anyone? I think I'm going to stop the recording now too. So thanks to everyone who's listening through the YouTube. Feel free to email me with questions if you're listening at home.